Hello and welcome to University of Chicago's Career Month webinar, Resume Like a Millennial. In this 1-hour webinar, we will focus on building a resume for less recent grads. We'll be covering how the resume game has changed while the basics haven't, what a contemporary resume needs to include, using keywords to your advantage. I'm really excited to introduce our presenter, Mic Fleming, who is a Booth graduate from 1997 and he's also the co-director of the Workforce Readiness Program for the Portland Human Resource Management Association of Portland, Oregon. As such, he regularly lectures in the inner city high schools, federal prisons, and veteran associations on search challenges for particular job seekers. He holds a BA from Yale and has a career in financial services and human resource management. Mick is also just naturally into helping and serving people. Twice a month, he volunteers at the Portland Veterans Hospital, where he is a motivational coach for veterans working with various health issues. And also, for his own fitness, he has run San Francisco Bay to Breakers race 12 times. So I couldn't be more excited for us to hear what Mick has to share today, and I'm going to hand it over to him.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really pleased to be giving this seminar. And I want to say at the beginning that the takeaway of my presentation today is for you to customize your resume for each job application you make. That means make an inventory of your skill sets, relate these to quantifiable measured accomplishments, and then associate these with the required qualification of the job to which you're applying. Those will be the key words that you'll see in the job posting. Required qualifications, desired qualifications. Pick out those that match your skill set, show how you've accomplished something, what you have achieved using that skill set, and put that into your resume and cover letter. This really can apply whether you're changing jobs or a career path, changing your career path, or you're coming back into the workforce. And it's hard work. It can be, everyone knows, or everyone says and knows, it can be a full-time job to find a job, and none of it's easy, but the inventory is the best starting place. You want to target the field of your desired workplaces, and then fashion a resume that proves why you're the best person for that specific job. I have a saying, it's not about you, it's about the employers and their needs. And that's what you need to keep in mind, and if you take that away from today's presentation, you will be miles ahead. We're going to go over the situation for older workers. I'm going to talk about the A game you need to bring to it. Interesting section on diversity models which are changing, and we'll have some tips and tricks to update your resume. Here's the joys of the job market as it looked in the 12th century, and sometimes it feels just like it did then. You get some winners and losers, you get the elect and the diselect, and it can all look pretty chaotic. But in sales, they say the hardest thing in learning is how to overcome fear of rejection. In the job search, you've got to find a way to stop thinking you're too old, too accomplished, too expensive, and one way to do that is to find a job search buddy. Two of the most successful salespeople I've ever met in my career got up every morning and phone called each other and gave each other a pep talk, shared their leads, shared their ideas, shared their skills, and gave each other a pat on the back and took off for the day. And a job search buddy can help you with your proofreading, can help you practice your interview questions, can help you look at your resume and make a reaction to it, and it's a good way to do it and a good way to keep up your attitude. Ageism is real, no doubt about it, and if you're later on in your career, you've already been introduced to it. But you know what? You've got experience that you bring to the game, and that's also real. The facts are the workforce is aging. 10,000 baby boomers hitting 65 every day, but that's still a large segment of the workforce over 55, and it creates both a problem and an opportunity for employers. The next two slides are going to be from a presentation of the Society for Human Resource Management. They got a $900,000 grant, let's say $1 million grant from the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation to do workforce research, and that led them to encourage employers to consider more older workers in the mix. And if you look at this, you'll see that it's a huge opportunity for companies to look at this far into the chart of older people. And now this isn't going to happen overnight. I'm not going to pretend that it's happening now, but it is a movement, and the Professional HR Association is encouraging people to look and think differently about it. One of the most interesting challenges, and again, this is from their presentation, is for about the first time, certainly in my memory, we've got 5 generations working together in the U.S. workforce. And we all bring different assumptions and attitudes, but for a moment of schadenfreude for everybody who's run into this, I'm reading more and more how millennials, that would be Gen Y on this graph, are concerned that Gen Z, the entry-level people, don't have a work ethic, their attention span is short, and they're not willing to pay dues to be an effective employees. And that tells me really nothing changes generation to generation. But it is something to think about as you think about how you fit in and what you're looking at. Here are 3 myths about older workers. We're slower, we can't keep up, we're uncomfortable with technology, unable to learn new ones, and we're coasting towards retirement, not really interested in learning anything new. Research continually disproves this, but this is often what you're up against, and you need to be aware of that and show that you've got energy, show that you're learning new things, show that one of the reasons you want to come work for this company is that you can learn new skills. 5 top advantages that this survey produced from talking to employers as to how they ranked qualifications that they're looking for. 77% looking for more work experience and knowledge. Well, you've got that. You need to showcase it. More maturity and professionalism. You'll show that in how you conduct yourself. A stronger work ethic. You and I perhaps take that for granted, but it turns out, guess what? It's got a value. And the ability to serve as mentors and coaches is something we often overlook as something that we've developed during our careers, and we have the skill, knowledge, and ability to transmit our work skills to others. And more reliability, well, sure, you show up for the job, but there it is. It's considered a value by employers. Here are top skill shortages that were identified, and they match the advantages. Professionalism, work ethic, they don't see enough of it. Critical thinking and problem solving, that's much in the news these days. Think of problems that you have solved. Think about issues you have had to work through. Come up with how the accomplishments were that prove that you have that skill, and add that to your inventory. Lifelong learning and self-direction goes along with the same thing and counters that idea that you can't or are not interested in learning anything. And those are these subtle things that they'll never exactly ask you, but knowing that, you can fashion your resume to show that you've done that. Everyone talks about millennials, and everyone thinks they have these 5 skill sets, but not really. But you need to know that perhaps you're getting looked at that way by potentials. One of the things I'd point out is social media comfort. This doesn't mean in this context whether or not you have your own Twitter account, but it does mean that you understand the importance of social media to promote the company's brand. And moreover, many companies and recruiters are posting and searching on platforms such as Facebook. It's a huge marketing avenue, and whatever you may think of President Trump, you have to admit he's a master of controlling the conversation, and one way he does it is through social media. Networking, we all know, if you haven't networked in a while, brush up your skills. We all knew how to do it at one time. We all know how to do it. It's like riding a bicycle. We can all get on. And I'm going to have a slide later where I confirm again that networking is still the best way to find a new job. Bring your A game to the job. Knowing the skill shortages, knowing what I've just discussed, knowing what we've got to work with, to work against, will tell you how to inform your career documents to highlight your authenticity, achievements, and attitude. So Rachel, at this point, let's take our first survey question.
All right, you should all be able to see the question, what drew you to this webinar today? And we'll give you about 30 seconds to register your answer. All right. Our results are, I am interested in tips to get my resume noticed, 25%. I want to stop letting my resume age me, 13%. Career transition, 31%. Stalled job search, 8%. Beginning a job search, 23%.
So that's interesting. We'll try to cover that and touch on these, and let me go through my 3 A's. First is authenticity, and it's a new hot buzzword. I'm not sure what it means, but everybody's using it now. But for leadership, it means examples of times when you had to adapt to a changing situation. You've learned from your mistakes. You're healthy and non-defensive. Think of all the interview questions that you can get from that as to have you been able to adapt? Have you learned from your mistakes? And that doesn't mean what's your biggest weakness, but you'll get asked, what's a big mistake that you made and what did you learn from it? Here's a way to show your authenticity. For job seekers, it means bringing your natural self, letting your personality break through. You don't have to write these things as if you yourself are the computer. Be yourself and be real. And don't show up or try to present yourself looking or acting younger than you are. It really will backfire. And my final note to that is it's okay to lose your attaché case and tie. The Intern was a movie. Accomplishments is really what's going to get you the interview. And some resumes now actually have a section called accomplishments that pick out the accomplishments over your career that relate to the job to which you're applying and put it in a separate section. You may, but we're going to talk about how to lay out the resume, but at the top you will have a summary or a summary statement. You'll have a statement of your overall skill in which you bring to the job, and then you'll list the qualifications that you have. And what I'm suggesting with your accomplishments, use what we all know as the STAR method. What was the situation? What was the task you had to deal with? What action did you take? And what was the result? And if you can do this in 1 line or 2 lines at the most, that's best. And what you want to do is pick out the ones that match the job. Quantify your results, showing the value you add. What do you bring to the game? Match those results to the job posting description. Match your personal values to the company, and you find those in the About section on their website. You click on About, and it tells you, here's what we're all about, here's who we think we are, these are our values, and match those to yours and start listing them in your cover letter and in your resume. What I would do is take a yellow pad, make a line down the middle. On the left, put down all the skills that you think you have, and on the right, put down accomplishments that you've had with those skills. I certainly want to know what you did, but I really want to know how you did. Attitude, park it at the door, leave it behind, get over it. With that job coach, that job buddy, pop up your attitude every day. I've had fun over my career of making a folder of things that I've actually seen in cover letters and resumes. I call them mixed picks. This first one was in response to an email posting for a job that I put out, and this was simply all I got from this candidate. Due to time constraints, I require a phone interview with a senior representative of the company who's knowledgeable in the position being offered and its requirements before setting up a formal interview to ensure the proper fit is the perfect company and myself. I didn't answer it. The hotel was no longer part of the Hampton family due to a greedy owner who refused to invest in the hotel. I would not have seen this except that in his cover letter, he asked me to go look at his LinkedIn site, and this was the first thing on his LinkedIn site is the summary of who he was and who he's about. And he just introduced me to it, and quickly I was able to eliminate him. You don't badmouth the previous boss, no matter who it was. Same with this next one, which is was in the format of the resume, left after conflict with the regional manager cannot be resolved. Well, if you couldn't resolve it with the regional manager, you're not going to resolve it with me. Thank you very much for playing. But look for these things. It reflects and speaks to attitude, and this is again where a buddy can maybe pick that out and say, you know, you may want to rethink that. Job search itself has changed a good bit. My recruiter friends all tell me that they are doing much more advising to the company to clarify their needs, to sharpen their questions, and to get more involved in candidate screening. We all know that the work structures are less hierarchical. You know, anymore, what's hot desking? Who ever heard of a servant leader? What do we really mean by collaboration that supposedly is a millennial skill set? We all know how to collaborate. We all had those work task groups at Booth where we maybe for the first time learned how to put together a team and how to get the team to a decision and how to discuss and conclude and work together. But this becomes more and more important in the minds of many employers, and if you have examples of how you did that, get those in there. Job posting venues have multiplied. Well, we all know this. There are literally scores, dozens of job posting venues that you can look at, not the least of which are the company websites and the company Facebook pages. When I applied to Paychex, which became my biggest job in my career, I answered a 2-line help wanted ad in the Chicago Tribune on New Year's Day. Think how much that's changed since then, and to where you look and where they are and how you find them. Automated tracking systems are evolving. I'll talk about that a little more later. But anymore, when you apply online, you actually are going to be uploading your resume or answering questions or filling in or linking their system to your LinkedIn, which is going to pull out a lot of basic information. Submitting your resume strategy really has changed, and particularly for less recent grads, you want to target the companies that you apply to and spend a lot of time targeting and fashioning that resume to the hopes, desires, fears, loves, and wants of the employer. It used to be when you got an outsourcing coach, they would say, oh, send out 50 resumes a day. You know, send them to everybody, it'll stick to the wall somewhere else. I call that carpet bombing. But today, you really need to fashion it and tell the recruiter, tell the company your story and why your story matches the needs of that employer. Here's a good left and right as to how things have changed. If you don't think the scope, the magnitude, and everything else has changed, it's amazing. The machine ate my resume. It's becoming more. It's like man versus the machine. I mean, these are computer systems, but no quarter given, none asked, boo hoo hoo. Process can be really frustrating, really exasperating. Some of these systems, you know, time out before you even had a chance to finish them, and you got to start all over again. But that's, as they like to say, the hand we're dealt. The best thing to do is to just live with it, deal with it, and understand robots rule. The kill rate 75%. You need to get past them. The one little dirty secret about applicant tracking systems, until recently, most of them were incapable of doing searches. So they would use them for new job searches. So you used to get a response back that says, we didn't pick you this time, but we'll keep you on file for the next one. A lot of these systems don't really do that. Now, the software is changing so that job interviewers can go back and look through them. But what you need to be aware of is when the company that you signed up for future notices sends you a new list of jobs available, that's your cue to go in and reactivate your resume, to revise your cover letter, to match the new job, and to make sure that they know you're applying for that job. But if you're passive about it, it's just going to sit in their system forever. The machine is going to score you by matching the required and preferred skill sets of the job post. The human will look for the results with those skills, but they're literally going to program them. I want innovation, I want this, that, and the other, and they're going to look for those specific words that are listed in the job post, to include even the hyphenating, the spelling, the punctuation. So you need to use the exact words of the job posting in your resume, in your cover letter, a couple of times so that it gets picked out on that. The machine will get you to the human gets you to the interview. So keywords are those words that are the required or the preferred qualifications. Now, a few of us are going to match all of them, but 6 of 10, highlight those 6. You got them. Make sure they know you got those and what you can do with them, what you have done with them. But guess what? The hiring manager might actually be a millennial. And the thing is, not to panic, keep calm, work with it. And something that's really interesting, Ray Notovitz is one of the top executive recruiters here in Portland, and he's written a very interesting blog about how red flags on resumes are different for millennials. And really for an older worker, these can really help if you work in the right way and if you're aware of it. And the conventional wisdom is that the ideal resume presents someone that meets the criteria outlined in the job description. You take a clear and a stable career path, and you show up for work and follow directions. That's the traditional way of looking at it. That's how most of us have looked at other resumes and how most of us are presenting ourselves. But for millennials, longevity as a red flag may not occur to them the same in a traditional way. For a traditional generation, job hopping was a red flag. But for a millennial, staying in place may really look as too long, may not look like a good thing, may not look like you have any motivation, incentive, or initiative. Millennials generally see no point in paying dues, and so instead of longevity or loyalty, they're going to see a sign of complacency. But if you have a career that has progressed through several different companies and several different jobs, you can use this to your advantage, and the way you will do that is to show how you learn new things, how you progressed, how you became more professional, how those things made you a better candidate for that particular job. Leaving information off your resume. Traditionally, that's a red flag, and it means you're hiding something. But millennials really don't want to get bogged down in a lot of detail. They want to know specifically what can you do for their company in a concise and relevant presentation. And many of them are going to just score you down if you make it too long, you try to explain too much. And that, again, could work for you in your presentation. And employment gaps, I think, is really particularly useful to know when you're thinking if you have been out of the workforce and coming back in, if you've had a long time between a couple of job shifts. Let's face it, nobody today, I never see a resume where somebody hasn't actually been laid off. So if you were laid off, that's not that just means you're in the workforce. But for millennials, they're much more interested in your values, and they're much better at work-life balance than previous generations. If we're to think generalized, obviously there are plenty of exceptions, but they'll have less issue with a gap if that gap relates to their values. So you took time off to raise your family. For a millennial, that's a good thing. When you had that time off, did you spend time in personal enrichment? You learned something, you traveled somewhere, you got involved in something entirely different, you volunteered for something. Those will be pluses. So what to do about that is, Roy would say, do your research, understand the company you're pursuing and its culture, read the executive bios, review their products and services, know their competitors and the market culture of the industry if it's new to you. Everyone's got buzzwords. You can put some of those in, not to overdo it. But this, again, relates back to what I said at the beginning. You've got to target, and you've got to target carefully, and you've got to understand the company and show how you match the company. Not what the company can do for you, but what you can do for the company. Rachel, why don't we take a pause and look at that second survey question.
Great. Our second question is, what do you hope to get out of this webinar? A, advice on how to improve my resume. B, knowledge about how resumes have changed. C, keywords to add to my resume. D, to learn what a contemporary resume needs. Again, we'll take about 30 seconds. I see folks have already started answering, so let's give you a minute to keep answering. Okay, I think we're getting close to being ready to close the poll, so if you still need to vote, please do so. All right, we're going to close it. And we have 38% would like advice on how to improve my resume. 0% want knowledge about how resumes have changed. 4% are interested in keywords to add to my resume. And 58% are interested in learning what a contemporary resume needs.
Great. Let's move forward then to something that is changing in workforce readiness. Diversity has been a buzzword for the last 10 years. We talk about diversity as employers, we talk about diversity as job seekers, but for older workers, it's becoming a new frontier. The models are changing, and you'll find this out. I talked to Yvonne Decker, who is retired as the top executive for HR for the city of Portland. And she is big on looking for diversity opportunities from companies. You look at the company website, and she says, read between the lines and discover the diversity posture and see if that applies to you and if you can work it. Interestingly, many companies now consider age a factor in establishing their workforce. And if the job posting lists a hiring preference, which they often do, her advice is be sure you self-identify in your resume or your cover letter. Maybe you're a person of color and they say that they're working on that in their website. Maybe you're a veteran or a particular sort of veteran. Be sure that you self-identify for that. Here's an interesting sign that I saw the other day. OHSU is the Oregon Health and Services University, and this is right at their front door. They have an aerial tram that comes up to the hospital on the hill, and when you get off the tram and go down the hallway, this is the first thing you see, and it's a huge display about diversity at the hospital. But look down at that third section. Diversity includes age. When have you seen that before? This is coming in now. It's the first thing up. Then you realize they've listed them in alphabetical order, but it's on there and it's new. Looking at websites, look for the story. Nike is a huge employer in Oregon and in Portland. And I think Phil Knight is probably single-handedly the biggest supporter of the Oregon Ducks in terms of his contributions to the university. But look at this picture from their website. It really looks diverse. I mean, look at the number of women. Look at they've all got their hands out and teamwork. They're supporting each other and working together. And they're people of color, and they all look 30. Here's another take. Adidas, another Portland employer, the same kind of business. But of these two, I kind of like the one with the gray-haired guy drinking a beer and eating a brat. and that tells me something about the company that maybe they intended to suggest or maybe not, but I like my odds at this company as compared to Nike just based on the visuals. Here's a statement from the Chief Human Resource Officer at Adidas. We also support employees of all ages and life stages. And down at the bottom, when there are times when a fresh perspective of a younger employee is vital to the well-being of the organization. There are times when the wisdom that comes from lived experience proves invaluable. It takes a village. Now, what's interesting about their website is they have a diversity dashboard. And I don't know if it's real time, but it's regularly updated as to what the average age is, what their breakdown is, what they're looking for. And in her presentation on the website, she acknowledges that they don't have enough female executives, and they're actively looking for female executives. If you're a female executive, this is the kind of wording that you want to see on a website that will give you a clue as to where you might want to apply or what you want to make one of your target companies. What hasn't changed in the workforce, in the search? Networking is still the #1 best way to find a job. And work that up and continue to make that in your arsenal for it. You still do need a good resume and a cover letter, and the purpose of the resume hasn't changed. It doesn't get you the job, it gets you the interview. And writing is still important. Be efficient, active, and brief in your writing. The most fatal error is proofreading is still the biggest resume killer on the battlefield. Spell check is not your friend. Errors speak to attention to detail, and say in financing and accounting, a small error is not a small thing. Proofreading is really hard to do. Get somebody else to do it. It's the hardest thing to do is to proofread your own material, and it reads so smoothly that sometimes you just will miss things. I have an example here from an actual resume that came to me. I didn't have the sense to call up and ask if that might have been the art school, but when people see this, they just throw your resume away. They just figure you're not professional, you're not serious, and you don't have attention to detail. I once did a job search for a CFO of a company who said right at the beginning, Mick, don't send me anything that's got any errors whatsoever in it. I just don't want to see them because that's not the person I want. And I can't emphasize this enough. Here's some fun. Even in Chicago, my sister teaches undergraduate English and is always looking for fun opportunities to make a teaching point. On the left, Cub fans, and I'm really happy on the right to know that if the bus is late, I know where to find the stoop. This just shows that even in public and professional advertising and signage, proofreading is still the story. Now let's talk about the resume. Wendy Kent and her husband run a very successful employment agency in Portland, and she had these suggestions. Times New Roman as a type font is so yesterday. Even the New York Times doesn't use Times New Roman anymore. They've gone to Georgia, which still has serifs, but on their website, they use a sans serif font like Arial, and that's a really standard one. That's a good one. It's very clean. It's easy to read. My presentation is set up in Calibri, which is a Microsoft standard, or you can download Altahas Grotesque, which is Place Helvetica, as a really nice, easy to read sans serif font. Don't put the word job objective. That shows that you've got an old-fashioned resume. And the real thing is, I don't care what your objective is. I want you to care about what my objective is. The objectives of the company is not yours. And instead, on a new resume these days, use a headline about your qualifications, something that says that what you are and what you are is what that job is that you're applying for. Make that your headline. The phrase references on request, this dates your resume. we know you have references on the application. We're going to ask for them. We assume that you've got them, and if you don't, you don't, and that's a different story, but you don't need to indicate that on the resume. Some people are still using paragraphs instead of bullets, and you don't need to list every job back to high school. When I talked about a millennial red flags, that would be something that is just too much detail they don't want to know. I need to know what you did recently, how well you did recently, and what you can do for my company recently. It's not a stone tablet. The all-purpose resume is dead. If you've got one resume that you're sending out to everybody, you're missing a huge opportunity. You need to rework the resume for every single job application. This is serious, because I'm going to look, the machine's going to look for the qualifications that I particularly need for that job, and if your all-purpose resume doesn't have it, it's not there. In a previous booth presentation, I love the phrase that the presenter said that if it doesn't relate to the job, don't even bother to list it on your resume, and I think that's excellent advice. It's all about the employer needs. Location your value proposition. What's your value proposition? What value do you bring to your employee for that specific company? And it's not what you did. I need to know what you did, but how you did it. And what are the accomplishments that relate to that company need? I hope this is about the 5th or 6th slide that I've had on that point, because this is the most important takeaway. Is that match your skill set, match your accomplishments to the company's needs. A qualification summary at the beginning gives you an excellent first pass, and then you can connect those descriptors. Back to my yellow pad example, you've got skills, you've got achievements, you've got experience. How does that match what they're looking for? Here are ways to lower the age volume. It's okay to drop dates from your education. You're farther along in your career. I'm a recent grad, I probably want to know that, but for a more mature worker, drop the dates. 10 years, 15 years, if you've worked 50 years, 20 years max is just fine, because it's the recent stuff that makes the most sense to an employer. It doesn't mean you want to hide it. You could summarize the rest, additional experience in financial services manager, and let the other 10 years after that, let them sit. And when you get to fill out the application, often applications today are now saying list your last 10 years, list your last 7 years. So you don't need to, it's not dishonest, it's to put it all in there. And in fact, it's probably overkill and too much detail. Show the relevance. What did you learn today? I interviewed a man who was looking for an IT job, and on his resume, even I knew that the first 10 languages he listed had not been used in the last 15 years. And why did he bother to tell me that? Why did he put it? I want to know, do you know stuff today? Use active verbs. That shows energy. I remember before, one of the prejudices against older workers is that you can't keep up, won't keep up. Active verbs, there's a subtle way to show that you can do that. Consider certification. Many fields have a certification that you get. Certainly human resources does. And you might consider getting that so you can put it on your resume or indicate that you are studying for it, or that you're enrolled in it, or that you're working on it. But show how you're keeping current. Use the current jargon and your industry terms. So if you've been learning a lot of new skills, and maybe they're not exactly from say a college campus, maybe you're doing online courses, put those in your education section. Put down, for example, I've got 16 course credits in whatever your topic is, journalism from the Poynter Institute. Or I've got 10 continuing education credits through the Association of Financial Planners. In my association, the Portland Human Resource Management Association, we give CEUs, certified CEUs, for almost every speaker that we have, and we give a certificate to it that you can have on file to prove it. But add that to your resume because it's current, you're keeping up with knowledge in your field. How long should your resume be? No recruiter reads more than 2 pages. If you want to write that 3rd page, write it and throw it away. Don't send me more than 2 pages. I'm not going to read the rest. I was once giving a presentation to high school students on how to prepare a resume, And I said, in an off moment, you're not going to get more than 3 minutes with me to read your resume. And my co-presenter looked at me with an arched eyebrow and said, hey, 30 seconds. And so I did the research, and research shows you get 10 to 60 seconds to make your case. 10 to 60 seconds to make your case, maybe a minute. And of course, the machine, that's much faster, nanosecond. But for the human, right up at the top, your headline, your skill summary, your achievement summary. It's like an executive memo. If the executive is not going to read anything more in your first paragraph, make sure you make your case there. If you have to go longer, my friend Wendy tells me, you can play with the text a little, play with the format, and she suggests maybe slim the margins a little. 1 inch is still ideal margin. You want as much white space to make it easy for me to read as you can, but look for formatting such as one line that just takes up one word, and you can get that out and shorten it. Don't do shrink to fit. No smaller than 11 point. 12 is preferred. I'm at the point where I got to wear glasses to read, and people in the 40s do that. So make it easy to read. In formatting, there are lots of ways to show, fancy ways to show your name and your contact information, but centered in the beginning, maybe bold type for name, still pretty standard. Anymore, we don't really need your street address. It doesn't date you, but it's not as necessary. I want to at least know your city and state, but I do need to know your email and your phone for it. And for that, make sure you have a professional-looking email address. I'm somehow partial to Gmail, but others are okay. I just don't like the look of Yahoo. I mean, are you a Yahoo? It may be a personal preference, but hot guy at yahoo.10 is not going to get it. And believe it or not, I do see email addresses like that, and I see them from material workers. So make sure you've got one, and make sure it's a simple one, so that if I try to enter it to contact you by email, I don't get bounce mail back. Here's another one too, is have someone listen to your voicemail message. How old do you sound? How can you bounce that up? How can you make that sound more energetic? How can you make that sound more professional? And then the question always is, do we have functional and chronological, hybrid, but whatever you do, keep it simple. The machines don't read the exit. Modern format heading is descriptive headline, just the word summary at the top, and a brief description of what you value, what you bring to the job. Think of the executive summary. And here's a sample from my friend Wendy Kent of what a sample summary statement might look like. Accounting leader skilled in running accounting, finance departments. Just a quick little summary of who you are, what you're about, and it relates to the job that you're applying for. Keep it simple is still the answer. You want to find those keywords from the job posting and put them in your cover letter and resume exactly as they're worded and punctuated. If there's a hyphen between them, put the hyphen in it because the machine is looking for that. And 2 or 3 times, put it in your cover letter, put it in your resume, the key words so that they stand out. And what exactly they put down, put down. If they're looking for innovation, you write the word innovation. Use a simple standard format, standard heading, not trying to get cute. The machine doesn't do creative. And if you can, in your resume, jigger your job titles to match theirs. Not very important, but it does make it easier. Spell out acronyms. Certified public accountant is an easy one, but CPA may or may not be read by a machine. And upload a Word document, because not all the machines are going to read your PDF. And no, you can't just send in a list of the keywords only. It's been tried. The machines are dumb, but they're not dummies. We're all tempted to do it after we talked about keywords and how important they are. So here's a question for you. Who would you interview? I have great programming skills. I'm a senior programmer at ABC Tech for 4 years, or I'm a systems engineering programmer, advanced knowledge and 4 years experience in Unix, Python, Ruby, PHP, and Perl scripting. That should be obvious. Here's one I actually got. My biggest skill is organize, attend, and participate in all required meetings on a regular basis. Well, okay. Cover letters. Love them or hate them, you still need to write them. Some recruiters only read your cover letter. Others never read them. But if the posting asks for one, obviously you got to send it. But a good cover letter can be your friend. It's no time to get cutesy or needy or I'm desperate for the job, but it's a great chance to explain your value proposition. Here is beginning of a 3-page cover letter that I actually got, and I didn't read past the first sentence, but I did note it from my folder. Get on LinkedIn. It's your other resume. It's your public profile. Recruiters are going there whether you ask them to or not. A lot of recruiters are only using LinkedIn as a job search, and everyone is using it as a validation tool. Does your resume match what you say on LinkedIn? And for my example that I gave you before of LinkedIn, be sure that you're professional in how you're stating your position. But it's a good way to show you the contemporary tools, and of all the social media concepts, this is considered most professional. Here's advice: get a professional headshot, spend the money, smile. A frown's the best way to look old. Lose the prize bass, the prom date, the kids in the pic. I did an interview yesterday morning at a coffee shop, and I looked up the guy's LinkedIn profile so I'd know what it looked like, and he was wearing mirror shades. And of course, don't put up that 20-year-old picture. Recruiters will look for your connections, who you connected to. They'll look at your endorsements. They'll look at your recommendations. So get a couple of those. What about Twitter, Facebook, etc.? The question everyone asks is, if I'm not on social media now, should I be? And the high consensus is no. But if you are already, lock it down so no one else can see it, because they'll go looking for it, and you may or may not have stuff that's on there. If you understood it and were comfortable, you'd already be on it. It's a great way to show you're a real person, but the drawback is it's a great way to show you're a real person. And what my friend Yvonne points out is people send you stuff, and whatever they send you that shows up on those sites, it reflects on you, whether you agreed with it, whether you wanted it, whether you didn't want it or not. And your private life is your private life, and keep it private. So in conclusion, I would say that ageism is real. Some companies are changing. Purpose of the resume hasn't changed, and it's what gets you the interview. Use your resume to sell your achievements, prove the value proposition. Use your cover letter to show your authenticity as a person. Use all your skills to maintain and project a positive and energetic attitude. Rachel, do we have one more survey question, or should we go right to the questions?
Let's go right to our questions since we're at the end here.
Yep.
And I had one that was about when you were talking about looking for diversity and checking on websites and things like that. Someone was saying, well, companies can put a lot of things on their website, but not all of it is true. Some of it might be superficial. So what would you say to that? Is some of that information just for marketing purposes?
I think it's a combination. It's a great question, but I think you're going to look for clues. They're going to put their best face forward, just as you are in your resume, and you may be cynical about it, but look for the clues, look for what makes sense, look for what gives you an in, look for what gives you a possibility to show how you're a match for that company. What else you got?
Thank you. Do you have any resources you might suggest for good modern resume examples? Like, is there a website we could go to and look at?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm always surprised at what you can find on the internet. So if you take the job that you're looking to prepare a resume to match, put in resume for systems programmer, and you will get 20 different sites that will show you practice resumes, will show you interview questions related to it, and it's a great source, and there are all kinds of these things for all kinds of jobs. So that all you have to do is go to Google or go to your search engine, put in resume for, and list the job that you have, and you'll get all kinds of stuff. It's just amazing.
Great, that's really helpful. When we're looking at LinkedIn, is it okay to have some of our personal contacts there, or should that be for work only?
On LinkedIn?
On LinkedIn.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think that's fine. The thing is about the contacts is I may know some of them, or they may be people that are really good in that field, or match what it is. I think if you've got 20 contacts, you're probably not a serious LinkedIn person. You probably just put it up for the purpose of this job search. But you've got your friends in there. I've got my friends in there. I've got a lot of business associates. I've got people that over time I found some sort of connection with. It's interesting. We've exchanged information, or just even LinkedIn will come up with little notes to remind you what they are, what they're about. But go for those references and get somebody, work associate, to say what a great job you did, and even better, what accomplishments they noticed, or why you're a good person to work with, or why you're the best boss they ever had, or something like that, because they will be read.
Great.
One more?
Yeah, so we have someone here who said they've been a freelance consultant for over 12 years, and they did work for a consulting firm prior to that, but how can they protect their clients' names instead of using just their own individual name as the firm? It's been a challenge since many recruiters have hung up on employers and when they don't know the clients, when they're not able to pre-screen you by talking to who you've worked with before.
I think there are two ways to deal with that. One is give your own company a name, INGSHR, your employee service solution, and talk about your clients, and talk to them about them for the industry that they're associated with. I have a niche in hospitality, so I will say one of my clients owned 25 hotels, which is true. But another way to do it is to call that client and get their permission. I think you're right to want to have some confidentiality about it, but you can invite that former client. I would like to use you as a reference, or I'd like to mention you as one of my clients. Is that okay? I think that's a perfectly good way to handle that problem.
Wonderful.
Something else?
Someone asked, do you think previous titles, managing director, for example, are necessary, particularly for older applicants? I'm concerned about being viewed as overqualified.
Well, it's a real concern, but your qualifications presumably bring you the experience and the skill set and the knowledge that's needed for it. So, again, look at what you're applying to and how does that help the company. And even though that may be your actual title, maybe you can tone it down a bit. Maybe instead of a senior manager, you're a manager. Maybe director means different things in different companies, so that it shows you progressed. You don't want to say that you worked 20 years and you never progressed in your career. And so it's a tricky one to manage. But I think, going back to my original premise, what do you know and what did you achieve with what you know, and make that the emphasis. Not so much what you did and make me guess as to how well you did at that job, but I want to know, how did you affect the company's bottom line? How did you affect the company's culture? How did you bring value to the company and to that particular job? And make that the emphasis and not worry so much about that title.
Great. You suggest that the LinkedIn resume should match the one that you're sending out. Do you have any tips for how to do that, since we're changing our resume for each job we're applying for?
Well, I don't mean literally match, but that I don't want to find out that you're a writer on LinkedIn and you're really a chemical engineer on your resume. That's what I mean by making the match, that the body of work, the information, the success, where you've been, what you've done, match up. And those things you're going to highlight at the beginning of your LinkedIn profile, that summary as to who you are, what you're about, and what you've done. So in that sense, that's what they mean by verify, and that's what they mean by match. One of the things that's annoying about LinkedIn is it encourages you to list every job you had back to high school. Don't do that.
Great. And a final question is, you encouraged us to put volunteer experience or certification or just sort of new education onto our resume. Should that just be in a list? How would you add that to a resume? Trying to make it brief.
If it relates to the job, I absolutely would put it on. I serve as a volunteer on the board of the Portland Human Resource Management Association, but I think it sounds pretty good. So if you can find a position or volunteer in something that relates to the job that you're applying to, absolutely put it on. And I would have a section, volunteer work, at the end, maybe down there where your education is. I like to know people are involved. I like to know people learning new things. If your volunteer work has nothing particular to do with the job, it may not particularly help it. But if you can get on the board of the association in your city that relates to your career, that's a terrific thing to see on it, and it's a volunteer thing. If your volunteer work counters one of those false impressions that people have, energy, learning new things, social media savvy, if it counters that, that helps your resume. Put that on there. If it's simply that you're in some sort of club that has nothing to do with the job that you're applying for, I wouldn't list it.
Great. And what about our certification? Should we put that in accomplishment? Where would we put that on any new online courses or certification?
Let's back up to accomplishments. Some resumes actually have sections called accomplishments, and you take 3 to 5 accomplishments, put those under the skills that you listed up at the top. You have at the top summary, then you have your statement of who you are, then you list your skills, and then you might have an actual section that says accomplishments that match the results for those skills, that match the job. But I would certainly put under education, or I'd put a section professional certification and put that in there. I think that's very important and it ought to be part of your resume. And if you can't find a place for it in your resume, absolutely highlight it in your cover letter.
Great. It's
even
12.
If you're just studying, or even if you're just in class or just studying for it, I would put that on there.
Great. So we should
currently pursuing.
We should make sure to put on any kind of education. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're learning new stuff. One of the qualifications that people want is can you learn new stuff? Are you interested in learning new stuff? The head of Google says the thing that he looks for most in an applicant is what he calls CQ, and it stands for curiosity quotient. Are you curious to learn new stuff? And if you take this job, can I rely on you to learn the job? And anything you can show that shows that you have lifelong learning, put it in there.
Great. So, folks, I know we have many more questions because it's just such an interesting topic, but it's 12:59, so I'm going to be ending our webinar. I want to thank you all so much for attending the University of Chicago's Career Month programming. I hope you'll go back and look at our website for more of the webinars we're hosting this month. There are 16 in total this November. And once again, I want to thank Mick for joining us and offering this really insightful and helpful presentation. Thank you so much for helping us all prepare better resumes for the future.
Thank you, everyone, and good luck in your searches.
Bye.